Hey there, lovely listeners. Welcome to Uniquely Wired Podcast. I'm your host, Nani. On this podcast, we uncover the beauty and nature of autism through heartfelt conversations. Let's jump in. Welcome back, listeners, to the Uniquely Wired podcast. I'm your host, Anani, and I am so excited to have you here listening to this new episode, which we have a very special guest. She is truly, amazing in all that she does, and I'm just so happy to have her here. This is Ailana. This is our guest for the episode. This week, she is an occupational therapist. And she was actually my daughter's OT. And now she is Jacob's OT. And it has been nothing but amazing. And I've truly seen the progress in both of the kids. So I am excited for her to share a little bit about herself and who she is, what she does, and all the things. So go ahead.
All right. Hi, everyone. I am so happy and excited to talk with Nani today and talk about all the things that OTs can do to help children, people in general. So my name is Ilana Siegel, and I actually just changed my last name because I got married 2 years ago and it took me that long. So yeah,
It's
so
okay.
yeah, so my last name is now Gottlieb. But I
Ooh.
have a 2-year-old and a 3-month-old baby. So I'm currently trying to navigate the new 2 children household. And yeah, I'm an OT. I've been an OT for about 12 years. 11 of those years I've been doing pediatrics, and 10 of those I've been doing specifically early intervention. And I've worked for the school that Nani's children go to for like 9 or 10 years now. So I love it there. And I think it's a great place. And I love using sensory integration. I think that it is one of the key components to help children get through their day, to succeed, to be in a learning space. So that's one of my big passions with OT is sensory integration.
I love that. And I will say, because people probably think you go like Jacob is either in Eliana's school or she's still there,
Yeah,
but it's
so I
okay.
worked I worked
Yeah.
with Eliana a few years ago, and now I have
Yes.
Jacob.
Yes. And you know what? Remind me, did you have Eliana both years that she was there?
No, so I had her only when she transitioned to autistic support. I didn't have her in her early intervention room.
Yes, that's true. So it was like on her last year of
Yeah.
preschool, but we became so close from that. I feel like you're one of the closest therapists that I know I'm close to, and I know that I could just pick up my phone in the middle of the night, just shoot Ilana a text, and I know that she will be there for me. Granted, unless she's sleeping and dealing with her babies.
Yeah. Yeah,
Of
and
course.
yeah. Yeah, but
But
I
no,
like that. That's why I do this, because I want to help. You know
yeah.
what I mean? And especially with children in the school setting, we're not going to be able to make change or progress unless we talk with the family. I only have your kid once or twice a week for 45 minutes to an hour. I can try and make a difference, and there's small things I can do, but nothing is going to change unless the parents also know what's going on and are also working with me to do that.
Ah, that's so good. I can't. Okay, we need to get into this because
Okay.
I just love it. So I guess, you shared a little bit, but what inspired you to become an occupational therapist, and what do you find most rewarding um about your
Yeah.
work?
Yeah. So I would say, in college, I was a little bit unsure what I wanted to do. And my mom actually worked at Penn State, which is where I went. And she had a career counselor who was friends with her. And she said, Ilana doesn't know what to do. And she's like, tell her she should look into occupational therapy. It's a really great field. Um, and so I looked into it. I'm like, wow, it's a big helper field, and I've always been a helper. I've been someone who always likes to help, likes to make sure everybody is included and nobody's left out. And like after I did some observations with other occupational therapists, I'm like, oh my gosh, like this is it. And the big thing about OT is we want to ingrain therapy into life. We want to make sure we're doing things that it's not like, oh, we're just sitting on the, in the therapy room stretching. we are playing games, we're making it fun. It's part of life. So you don't even feel like you're doing therapy, which is why I love it too. And the
That,
rewarding part, sorry,
yeah.
the rewarding part that you had mentioned is seeing the progress.
Mm,
Like, to be honest, Jacob, I can't even express to you how happy and excited it makes me to see him communicating with me. And he's telling me what he wants. And he's participating in the school day. And that, like, after being gone on maternity leave for 3 months and coming back and seeing the change in him, I just was so excited. And I told you that. So
yes, yes, you did. And when I got that text, obviously I cried because I know that the moms that are listening or the dads, I know that if they're in the same shoes as myself when it comes to having a child that has severe sensitivities, because
hmm
firsthand,
hmm
watching him and being able to have worked with Eliana in the past,
hmm
you see the difference. um,
Yeah.
it's a huge difference with the sensory part
Yes.
of it because Eliana had her sensory needs, but it wasn't like as severe. And
hmm
still is not as severe as Jacob. He is
hmm
so, oh my gosh, particular with things and
Very.
smells everything from a mile away. And I'm like, it's the
Like
same
how?
thing.
Yeah.
But the thing is, I'll be like a goldfish or like, a snack bar. And I'm like, you have this every day. But he
Right.
still seems like to still smell it. So, I mean, that's amazing that you share that because I do see the change.
hmm
But something you mentioned in the beginning, I do believe parents should be involved
hmm
because if it's just the therapist doing all the things
hmm
and the parent is not putting that to practice what the
hmm
therapist is already telling you to work on.
hmm
I mean, and it's work. It takes so much energy from us on a
hmm
daily basis, speaking from a mom's perspective, like it really does. And you're a mother yourself
hmm
of two
hmm
littles. So I
hmm
can't even imagine that that's hard.
But I feel like I have almost now, since, my older ones too, I have so much more empathy for the parents because
Mhm.
now I'm like, oh, I really get it now. Like, I'm actually kind of starting to potty train my older son, and I'm like, this is hard,
Yeah.
so like, and right now, as far as I know, he's typically developing. So
Yeah.
having a child who also has all these other needs to then
Hmm.
also try potty training is even more difficult.
Hmm.
So, so I even have more empathy now for families, and I really just want to help,
Yeah, and I love that. And I think what I would say, which we can talk about this forever, but I would say when a therapist loves what they're doing.
Mm,
You just
mhm,
know. You see it through their actions, you see it through their communication with the parent. You
mhm.
know me, I'm very observant. And you know what? If I don't like this
Involved.
therapist, I'm
Yeah,
like, listen, I don't know what this person is doing back there, but what I'm seeing, no
right.
type of communication, no nothing. No, we got to step up. I
Mhm.
understand that y'all get loads of children and lots of cases, but I'm like, man, if the parent is involved, take advantage of that.
Uh, you just nailed yes, nailed on the
I
head
just hit it. I
because
just hit it.
because that is so true. You're right. In the setting that we're in, some of our kids at this school are lower socioeconomic status, and that's okay. And their parents are working 3 jobs just to get food
Hmm.
on the table. I get
Hmm.
that. You might not have time to communicate with me. That's okay. I'm going to do my best. But if I have a parent who's sitting here texting me, calling, saying, hey, what can I do? I'm going to tell you. I'm going to work with you. So you're
Yeah,
right.
it becomes a teamwork
hmm
always.
hmm
So, can you share how do you know a child needs occupational therapy? Because this is a question that I know a lot of families may have as they're
hmm
listening. Like,
Yeah.
how do I know my child needs occupational therapy, or what even is
Yeah.
that, right? So,
Yeah.
can you share a little bit
So
about that?
so there's like kind of two different ways to look at this. So if your child is in a school setting, a lot of times what happens is someone who's already in the classroom all the time, like the teacher, or an administrator, might say, you know what, this child's having difficulty with their handwriting, with following the classroom routine, with using the bathroom, participating in lunchtime. I think that we need to refer out and get an OT to come in and evaluate them. So like that's one way. Another way is me as an OT might be working with like another child in the room and sees someone struggling with like what I just said, the same kinds of things. So occupational therapists work on what we call ADLs, activities of daily living. So feeding, toileting. Um, but in school, it's a little bit harder because we don't always work on that because some people think it's not educationally based. But I think it is, because if you need to go to the bathroom and eat during your day at school, you have to do that. So, but the other thing is, we look at your handwriting, and their ability to participate. So are they having trouble just transitioning to circle time or staying seated at the table or just being at the table in general or participating in art or just anything that happens throughout the day? That daily living is what an OT can help with. And that's kind of where we see if a child's struggling, then we would say let's see if OT can help.
Mm, I like that. And you just touched on something that, I got to talk about the whole,
Mhm.
you know, it's not educationally based.
Mhm.
It's so interesting because this is something I spoke to my husband about. And really, I talked to some friends about like,
Mhm.
how, like, I don't understand. This is something that our children, are going to use for life.
Mhm.
Like, how I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. I mean, you even went to college. I didn't even get to go to college, but you're in school. And I think about what I was taught in high school. And I'm like, I mean, half of the stuff I don't even
You don't use.
use in the
Mhm.
in the real world, right? And I'm like,
Yeah.
can we teach these kids like actual life skills? And
Yeah.
I'm all about it. I'm like, I want my kids to know life skills. Listen, that stuff they can eventually learn,
Yeah.
but like these things are essential to them.
Yes. Yes.
It's just
Yes.
essential. So I love that you said that. Um Now my next question is, what makes occupational therapy stand out from all other therapies available,
Mhm.
for our children?
Mhm. So,
Specifically, I would say obviously we're focusing more on those on the autism spectrum,
mhm.
since that's what this podcast is all about. So,
Yeah.
how does that make it different?
So, I believe that occupational therapists look at the child as a whole, right? So sometimes speech might just be looking at, okay, how do they communicate? Physical therapy might be looking at, okay, can they get from one classroom to the other, right? Can they walk, ambulate?
Right.
As an OT, we're like, okay, but can they play? Can they eat? Can they sit? We're looking at them as a whole. And also, I want to know, what do they enjoy? Because I want to
Mm,
incorporate that into therapy. And I'm not saying other therapies don't do that, but
mhm.
an OT is trained to look at the person, and that's why it's called occupational, because we believe occupations are not your job, it's what you do. So for a child, their job is to learn, play, um, socialize, and those are their occupations, and that's what we're trying to help them do. So yeah, so I think
Hmm.
we look at the child and the family as a whole.
I love that. You just explained that so perfect. Like I
Oh,
that makes a lot of sense. I do agree with that. And it's interesting because I am gonna have Miss Katie, who's, Jacob's speech
speech.
therapist. She's
Hmm.
gonna be on here. So I'm just excited to have you guys as therapists kind of give your perspective on things. And I think it's
Yeah.
so cool. And I love that. Um Now what are the benefits of occupational therapy? I know that, I've always talked about occupational therapy and how amazing it has been for both of the kids, but I
Hmm.
guess from your point of view as the therapist,
Hmm.
what are those benefits?
Well, there's a ton, in my opinion, and I feel like you probably agree.
Mhm.
We're giving the child the tools in to cope with dealing with their sensory difficulties, right? So we have like an understanding of the brain body connection.
Mhm.
So we are trying to help that child feel the best that they can in the school setting, in whatever setting it is that they're having
Mm.
difficulty with. And we can also, those skills can transfer to after school, to life. So the benefits are helping your child be more regulated, more attentive. And then also, if say your child just has difficulty with writing, we're helping them write, we're helping them do the physical parts that might be hard for
Mm.
them too.
Mm.
So Um, yeah, I mean, and I it's just like in my head, I'm like, oh, the benefits are endless. But those are just some that
Exactly.
I could pinpoint, kind of.
Yeah. No, and that's really good. And also, I know that OT helps and the child benefits from learning how to regulate.
Oh yeah,
When
exactly.
it comes
Yeah.
in like public settings. Like I'm sure you remember that video, or maybe you don't because it has been already a year. When I posted that video of Eliana at We Rock the Spectrum, and it went viral because I mean it was just such a cute video, and I had to
Yeah.
share it because she was so frustrated. And you know Ellie, she's still the
Mhm.
same when it comes to
Mhm.
like her emotions. She just cries
Mm.
so silently. She is not like a
Oh.
loud crier. It's so
Yeah.
funny though, but
Yeah.
because she just
Oh.
like be quiet. I'm like, are you okay?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
know, I know. It's like funny and not funny at the same time. But anyways, she was having such a hard time. I didn't realize like it was becoming so overwhelming for her.
Uh huh.
Thank God that We Rock the Spectrum has a calming room. And so
Mhm.
I took
Mhm.
her in there and I was hugging her in that video, and she was just
Mm.
like slowly calming down. And
Mm.
she has this thing with which I'm sure you know a lot of kids that are like that, especially autistic, that they'll go from like one mood to another. I don't
Mhm.
know if that's part of occupational therapy. You guys work on that?
Absolutely. That
Okay.
emotional regulation piece is huge. And
Yeah.
I'm actually starting to branch out a little bit and work more with older children on the spectrum. So, like adolescent,
Nice.
teens.
Oh,
And that's what I'm hearing from more and more parents is that he's got two settings: super happy, excited, silly, and then mad, really mad, upset. And there's no in between. And that's
mhm, mm,
because that emotional regulation piece isn't there. It's like they only have two settings. And I'm here as an OT to help a child understand how they're feeling in their
mm,
body and how to kind of get out of the one
mm,
and get back to that middle piece of feeling a little
mm,
bit more neutral and
mm.
you know what I mean, like having
Yeah,
another space to be in, not super silly excited and super mad, let's talk about
exactly.
how we can feel more calm and neutral.
Yeah, or like super excited and super sad.
Yeah, yeah,
Like
yeah,
that's more Eliana. You know, she's never really had aggressive behaviors, and
right.
she's so like that. You know, she gets very emotional. Like Jacob could
Mhm.
just be so much for her. You know, he's very
Mm.
loud and he stims very loud vocally, and so
Mhm.
that's too much for her. And I think that
Mhm.
day at We Rock the Spectrum, she was just so overwhelmed by everything. And then there were other kids.
Right.
But I literally, and I'm sure you would agree with me when I say you have to come to the child's level,
Mhm.
and don't try to talk to them with you being up here and they're on the floor. So
Mm-mm.
on that video you could see me, I come down to her level, I literally
Mhm.
put her around me. She saw the camera and she started laughing, and then she got sad, and I'm like, okay.
Oh.
But anyways, we're still working on that. And
Uh-huh.
so then I
Mhm.
have Jacob, who's always very silly and very happy. You know this, he's
Mhm.
always very
Mhm.
happy. It's rare
Mhm.
when he gets upset, but now that he's
Uh-huh.
getting older, I am noticing he's starting to express and show more of like his frustration. So I don't know
Yeah.
if he's done this with you where he'll go like he gets so mad and so like tensed up his whole body, and I'm like,
Yeah.
excuse me,
Yeah.
what is going on?
Yeah, we are seeing like different sides of him now too. And that's also making
Yeah.
him becoming a little bit more regulated and more aware of his feelings
Okay.
and his body. And which is
Yeah.
why now he's expressing that. Like,
Oh
oh,
my gosh.
you know?
It cracks me up in a way, but I'm
Yeah.
like, I can't laugh at this because he can't be coming in here giving me
But
that attitude. I'm
and
just
it's like he's so tiny and you're like, oh, you're
I
mad.
know. I cannot believe he's turning 5 in the summer. Like it's
Yeah.
still insane
Yeah.
to me because
Yeah.
I just looked at him today and I'm like, are you really turning 5? Like, did we get this whole thing wrong? Because I don't know.
No, no, but now we're seeing the
Yeah.
5-year-old of him, you know?
Oh my
That
gosh. And he's getting so much more mature. Like, it's just, I love
mhm.
it. I love it.
Mhm.
Okay. So now I know we share so much, and I'm sure families already have an understanding of what sensory processing disorder is. But I know
Mhm.
I had recently in the previous season of my podcast, season 1, I had a mom who her son had lots of sensory challenges. And so we kind of spoke, a little bit about what was sensory processing. And She gave her insight as a parent. Now, I
Mm-hmm.
want you to give your insight as a professional because
Mm-hmm.
obviously you will know a lot more deeper into what sensory processing disorder is. So, can you share about that?
Sure. So basically what sensory processing disorder is that I'm going to go kind of into like the science briefly of it. So,
Sure.
sensory input is registered by one or more of the 8 sensory systems we have. Then that sensory information travels to the nervous system, and then the nervous system creates a sensory response.
Mm,
So, it's kind of like if a child who doesn't like something sticky, right? So the sensory input is the sticky
mm,
texture that he touched. And then one or more of those sensory systems responds. So that could be um, the, the tactile system, or he might smell it. So the
mm,
olfactory system, and then it responds. And the nervous system says either, oh, I'm okay with this. And there's like no real response. Or I hate this. And it's get me away from it. And then it could be fight or flight. I'm crying, I'm upset, I'm running away, I'm
mm.
screaming, so those are the
Yeah.
responses to that sensory input.
Mm,
And I would say that our kiddos who have sensory processing disorder, most times the response is going to be, you know, inhibitory, meaning
mm,
like it messes with your day,
mm,
so
mm,
you
mm,
can't continue with that activity. You can't get past it. It brings you to a point that now you're upset and crying and you can't do anything else. So you miss circle time, you miss lunch, so that's how I look at sensory processing disorder.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And it's almost like it's hard for them to kind of go back to that like place where it
Yes.
all started because it's like,
Yes.
nope, I'm already afraid. And
Well, and that's
I
that's the
agree with
thing.
that.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like the fight or flight response in your nervous system, when your body goes into fight or flight, there's almost no coming back from it, because
Mm,
fight or flight is there to help save you essentially. Like
mm,
if you're in a parking lot and someone's like scaring you because they're walking behind you like holding a gun, you're in that fight or
right.
flight response and your body's just going to respond to save you. And that's kind of what
Yeah.
happens with our kiddos. They're in the fight or flight response instead of in a different part of their brain able to regulate. I don't like this, but
Mm,
I'm okay. I'm going to get through it, as opposed
mm,
to, oh no, I'm done. And they're running, you know?
mm.
So that's,
And
that's,
yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
as an OT, that's where we are there to help them get out of the fight or flight response and help their mind use a different part of their mind to help regulate and get through it.
Wow. And just pretty much like reassure them it's okay.
Yes.
It's going to
Yes.
be okay. It's nothing to be like super afraid of. And I'm
Yes.
sure from you as a therapist, that takes a lot from you. I mean, because some kids, I'm sure, are more difficult than others. That's just, I mean,
Right. Like some kids
that's
do
life.
respond with aggression, like you said, but like Eliana, she would not respond with aggression. She would probably just shut down,
Just shut down. Yep.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Mm-hmm.
and that's where it becomes difficult as an OT working in a classroom, trying to explain this to teachers sometimes who may not have that understanding. Where if
Mm-hmm.
a teacher is pushing, 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 and that child shut down and they're just getting more and more shut down, and they're like, well, why aren't they doing it? And it's like, because they're having a sensory response. We have to help them. We're not pushing them, we're giving them a break. We're helping them calm down, and maybe we can
Mm-hmm.
bring them back to it. So that's one of the most difficult things for me is,
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
getting my team of people that are also working with my kid on the same page and helping them understand sensory.
That is wow. And I salute you for that, honestly, because I know, like I just said, it takes a lot from you. It takes a lot of your energy, like to put into it. Because number one, you have to be patient.
Yes.
You have to be
Yes.
patient.
Mhm.
You just have to like take deep breaths and inhale and
Yeah.
exhale. Okay, we can do this as a
Yeah.
team. We can get together and come on. Because
Mhm.
at the end of the day, you want that child to have consistency.
Yes. Yes.
You want
And
that
that's
child to have
that's the
consistency.
only time we're going to see progress, is when everybody who's working with this child is responding and communicating to the child the same
Yeah.
way, so they understand
Mhm.
what's going on,
Well, you
you
know
know?
what? you have your struggles with your teachers. I have my struggle with my husband sometimes.
Mm, mhm.
Because sorry, babe. Yes, I'm gonna say this, but anyways, all love. I'm just saying because I know Miss Katie right now has me working on something with the AAC with Jacob. So he
Mhm.
requests a snack bar. I have to give it to him, and now I have to wait for him to see what he does. I
Oh,
need
yeah.
help. Now request for help, right? Because I'm sure she
Right.
talked to the teachers and therapists about it. But
Yep.
so I did, and I see that my husband just gives it to him. And
Yep.
I'm like,
Mhm.
hold up. He's like,
Yep.
well, that's what he asked for, and he's hungry. And I'm like, I know, but like, we're working on this, and I'm like so huge on like working with the therapist and like, so I know where you're coming from in a sense because I'm
Mhm.
sure parents that are married that are listening, this is a struggle for families as well, and not just
Mhm.
with the partner. This is
Mhm.
also a struggle with the grandparents
Mm.
because grandparents are
Huge.
they spoil the grandchildren. That's I'm
And
sure
they're the
you see it
biggest
now.
helper. They're the helpers. Hey, my
Yeah,
mom's upstairs right now with the
yeah,
baby. Like, you
exactly.
know? So we got to
Exactly.
make sure
Bless
the
her soul.
grandparents
Yes.
are doing the
Yes.
same things. Yep.
Exactly. So I love that, and I agree with everything you just said 100%. I completely
Mhm.
agree with it.
Mhm.
Um Now, my last question for you would be,
Mhm.
what is an advice you would give a parent that's most likely, hesitant about OT because they're just like, well, you know what? I don't they just have this issue, but I think they'll outgrow it. They'll be fine.
Yeah.
But it's like, okay, it's better now than never. And
Mhm.
and I always say that, but what would be your advice?
So my advice would be I I would never see like basically try it. Give it a try. If you don't like it, you can always stop. You can always say, "You know what? This isn't for me." But the other thing is try it, and if you don't mesh with that therapist, don't just give up.
Mm,
Ask for a new therapist, and you know you can do this. Advocate for
yep.
who is your cup of tea, who works well with your child, who
Mm,
works well with your family, and
mm,
if it's not working, try someone else because sometimes it might be the therapist that you just don't mesh with. They're not a bad therapist. It's just mindset. So
yeah.
ask for someone new. When you find that person, you can talk to them. And OT is there to help you guys succeed in your goals. That's another thing that why OT is special. We're not going to ever work on something that you guys don't think is important. If you
Mm,
don't think feeding is important, then we won't work on feeding. If you want something else that maybe I didn't think about, we'll work on that.
mhm.
Um, we believe that it's what the client needs and wants. That's what we look at. So
Yeah.
I think OT, and we work on so many aspects of life. It's
Mm,
not just speech, it's not just walking, it's not just behavior, it's kind of everything combined.
mhm,
So sometimes that's actually where therapy starts with OT so that we
mm,
can kind of work on everything. And then I can say, you know what? He does need more help with his lower body strength and his
mm,
walking and his balance. Let's get PT on the case too. Or, I'm having a lot more trouble with understanding what this child needs. Maybe we can get speech on here to start using an AAC device and so they
mm,
can communicate better.
mm.
Um, so I don't know. That's kind of what I would say.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
that's
mean,
that's perfect. I think that's just plain and simple, straight to the point, and I love it. And I love that because you know what, not all therapists will do this, and I love that you just mentioned, if they do need PT, you would recommend this.
hmm hmm
I love that. Now, you know what? I forgot to ask this question, but
hmm
do you think, because obviously I learned this from you when you told me, I think it was 2 years ago, that you
hmm
mentioned to me that sensory processing is not just for autistic children. You
absolutely.
could have sensory processing disorder and not be autistic. So now,
hmm
would you say everyone has a little bit of sensory
Oh my gosh.
challenge? Like, can,
Yes.
can we talk about that
Yes.
real quick? Okay, I'm sorry.
Oh
I
my
thought I was going
gosh.
to end this episode, but I have to
No.
go back to this because it just
Yeah.
came to mind.
Oh
Yes.
yeah. And I would say that not that sensory processing disorder is new, but it's it's something that wasn't really talked about before. It was always like, "Oh, you're just so weird that you don't like this texture of food," or "Oh my God, you don't like to wear wool sweaters? Like, why not?" And it's like, well, I don't like how that feels on my body. Or, I personally hate wet socks. So, like, if I know it's
Oh,
raining outside, like, I will not wear a shoe that I know my foot would get wet, you know? And the problem is, our kids with autism who are nonverbal, they can't communicate that with us. So we don't know. And then they're having a meltdown
mm,
because they're like, "It's raining, my feet are wet, I don't wanna go out there," so but they can't even tell us that.
yeah,
So but yes, I would say every single person on this universe has some kind of sensory
yeah,
difficulty.
yeah, yeah,
Some
yeah,
people can't eat marshmallows. Some people
yeah.
can't handle
Mm-hmm.
styrofoam balls that come in your
Yeah.
packaging. It's just there's so many different.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. So,
Mhm.
and let me just say for those that are listening, this is not the same as saying everyone is a little bit autistic. So, no, because like I always say, no, we're not everybody's a little bit autistic. Like sensory has nothing to do with it. And
No.
I feel like that's where the confusion comes in this
Mhm.
society. Like,
Mm.
and this is what I'm trying to do with this podcast is continue to spread more awareness and understanding of these type of topics that are not really heard about, or
Yeah.
people are just never talking about it.
Mhm.
And I always say, like, definitely, I have, and I'm starting to notice them more as I get older. And, like my husband will literally go to the tub, remove hair, as nasty as it sounds, remove hair. It makes me want to puke. Like, literally, my entire body is like shaking. I kid you
Uh-huh.
not. And I'm like,
Uh-huh.
why? Why don't you have gloves? Number one. Like,
Oh,
we
okay.
literally, like, he just grabs the hair
Right.
from the tub and just
And
like,
for him, it's fine, and for you,
yeah,
it's not.
it's disgusting because I was just there showering. So like
Mhm.
all the bacteria, all the dirt, it's just,
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know. And I mentioned this actually at the one church I was at in person talking about sensory because I've been using the presentation you shared with me, and I'm always like, I
That's
just love my
awesome.
son's OT. She's amazing. Thank God
Oh,
for her for giving me this presentation like this, with the sensory processing disorder. Because when I tell these churches, they're literally like,
like,
oh my
yeah.
gosh, that's why so and so does this. That's
Yeah. Eye-opening.
bingo.
Yeah.
Yes, bingo. And it's such a blessing to just, have this in hand. And I'm just grateful. And again, I just want to say thank you for giving that to me and allowing me to share that with the churches, because it has really been like uh not just a blessing but eye-opening to
You
these
are so
churches.
welcome. Because
And
when you said that, I was like, "You know what? I want her to do this. I same thing. I want people to be more
yeah.
aware
Mhm.
of what
Mhm.
these things are." And even like the
Yes.
whole 8 sensory systems, some people are like, "What? There's 8
Yes.
sensory systems?" And it's like, "Yeah, and it really affects you too."
And you know what? And I
So,
love that you touch on that because I'm always, you know, in my knowledge, I'm always like, oh, they just, there's the five senses. That's what it
mhm,
affects. But the fact that
mhm,
you just mentioned the a sensory, I mean, that is so deep. We will have
mhm.
to have an episode on just
I
that.
was just gonna say, I could go hours on that. So we could do a
Please,
whole nother.
yes, we will schedule another episode on that because I definitely want you to dive deeper.
Sorry, the baby just came down here and he's
Oh,
getting loud, so I'm so sorry.
it's okay. It's okay. No, we're gonna end this episode. I am just so grateful for you, Ailana, for taking the time out of your busy mommy day and being here and just really giving my audience this knowledge and so many insights and advice. I really appreciate it. And so we will be scheduling that next episode because that is I know I'm interested because obviously I have both
Yeah.
children.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So yeah, thank you
No,
so much.
you're so welcome. I'm so happy that hopefully this gets to a lot of people, and
Yes.
I could be some sort of help, even if it's just that little bit of eye
Mhm.
opening. Maybe they can send it to the grandparents and the grandparents can listen
Yes.
and get a little bit more
Yes.
understanding. But yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, just so you know, I have listeners not just in the US. I have families in Canada,
Mm,
Australia, United
amazing.
Kingdom, yeah,
Wow.
Ghana. I even just saw like my statistics. Ghana, like it's listen, it's a
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
interesting. But anyways, we're all over the globe.
Amazing.
So thank you so much again
You're
for
so
being
welcome.
here. All right, guys, I will see you again next week for another episode at the Uniquely Wired podcast. Thank you.
Bye.
And that's a wrap for today's episode of Uniquely Wired podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in and sharing this space with me. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and share. Until next time.